Hey everybody, so we are finally wrapping up Time for Dimensional Robin, and next week on October 25th we will release our season finale, The White Hole. The white hole is an hypothesis to the mystery of what a singularity might be at the center of a black hole. We figured if everything gets sucked into a black hole, maybe everything gets pushed out of a white hole on the other side. It's a tiny fun little theory, but that's the title of our season finale. And I know you're going to enjoy our season finale because it's going to have the most visual effects that we have in any of our episodes. It's going to be a lot going on in there. And in fact, I kind of wanted to show you a little bit about our visual effects because VFX are important. If you're going to do a sci-fi, you got to have decent VFX. And for us, even though it was a comedy, we still needed to have lots of VFX. So this is not an episode, Francis. This is a kind of making a video, or just kind of like a little vlog showing you how we use VFX. And so I got my buddy, Christopher Riemann. I've known him since college. He's done VFX for like Harry Potter and commercials and stuff. I mean, he's been doing VFX for a long time, so I knew he'd be a good guy. He's starting a company called Gringo VFX. So VFX can be as minute as the screens on a computer or TV sometimes, depending on what project you're doing. But for us, we had a computer screen. The other thing that I really wanted was to soup up our little machine, because all I did was create those light panels using the circuitry and my limited knowledge on electrical circuits and whatnot. So I created those panels, but I didn't create anything else. I just left blank black boards, which, to be honest, in a real supercomputer that probably would have been fine too, but I wanted it to look cooler, so I had him put in the supercomputer facade that we had in the background. So he had to do that for every angle that pointed in that direction in every episode. So it was actually quite a lot of VFX. That's like not even including the special VFX that we put in there. And so like a great example of the special VFX would be like the multiverse transitions. So when we travel through the multiverse, technically you wouldn't feel a thing. It would just happen automatically because time would be stopped. You just go to the next multiverse, no matter how far it is, the time doesn't matter. So like you would just literally instantaneously get to the next universe. But we wanted to kind of show like a representation of what we thought might be happening while time was stopped. And our idea was scrolling through the multiverse. So we would basically just have the still frame and then multiply it, duplicate it, and use that to create the effect that we put in. One thing that was important about it was that I wanted gravitational waves to be kind of like seen. So like when you look at a black hole, you see the curvature of space. So I wanted the curvature of space around our machine whenever it was used, except for when we were looking outside of the Schwarzschild radius. So inside the Schwarzschild radius, we played around with the gravitational waves and stuff like that, but outside the Schwarzschild radius, you can still see the gravitational waves. Those were used like page turners. So one of my favorite effects is the one going from Carly's character to Bia's character in episode 4. But the idea was basically to just kind of have like a spinning black hole, right? Like if the living room was a spinning black hole, the surface would spin around and it would change the universe around it. Like, so every turn was a new universe, that sort of thing. That was kind of the idea. I feel like we did a pretty good job pulling that off. Another useful tool for using VFX is fixing mistakes. There are things that can be planned, like the computer screen and the supercomputer. Those were planned to use VFX. But then sometimes you're in the editing room and you see a shot and bam, there's like a light in the shot and you really need to use that shot. Like, it's the only shot that works. So VFX can be useful there, especially if you have a plate. Sometimes you don't have a plate. So a plate is something that you put behind a shot. So like, for example, when we were shooting the floating clothing, we had to map out the clothing rack as well as the hangers. You needed a plate for that. So this is an example of an empty plate here. And then you have the shot that we used, and then you can see here how we wipe out everything we don't want, including the people in the background. But for like fixing mistakes, we don't always have a matte. For example, when we had that light, I had to find a shot from another episode to put it in there. So that was fun. One of the funniest challenges I gave my VFX team was that I wanted a fly to fly around in there for the fly episode. The issue is that a fly is actually a 3D animation. So they're not 3D animators. You know, they're not CGI 3D animators. They are VFX. They fix things and they do specific things like computer screens. But when I gave them the challenge of the fly, that actually took the longest time, which slowed us down a little bit, not too much, but yeah, it gave them the biggest headache, I think, was the fly. So they couldn't make it like a perfect animated fly, but that was okay, because for me, that's the whole point of this show. It's a sci-fi comedy, so the campiness is part of its character. I don't need the fly to look perfect. I needed the fly to look campy, and they did it. It worked. So another fun visual effects that we used was the machine itself. We had these lights that would go around on the tube. Now, I built that tube, and I built it with an LED that would just turn on and off. I didn't have like practical effects to make it enhance it. So originally I was like, yeah, let's just see if we can make it look like cooler, like have the lights do a pulse or something like this. And they came back to me with this multiple lights things as representing all of the particles that are being beamed through. They're not bombarding one proton at a time in the actual Hadron Collider. They bombard thousands at a time because most of them are going to miss. That's how small they are. And they measure the ones that actually impact. So what was funny was that when we were shooting, every time we turned on the throttle and it was on full power, our gaffer had an idea. Alan, our gaffer, Alan D, great gaffer. He says, hey, can I use this LED effect of multiple colors? Like, you know, it just basically flashes through colors. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. I like that idea. So we did it on set, and we had this sort of practical looking multicolor effect, which we all loved and thought it was fun. When I gave the assignment to the VFX guys to make that tube look cooler, they sort of came up with this very colorful lighting effect that actually matches the lighting effect we used. We call it the Allen effect, which was very colorful, and it worked perfectly. It's one of those moments where serendipity is real, you know, like things coincidentally happen and magic occurs. And so you would think it was planned, but it actually wasn't. And then one of my favorite VFX is the one that we used on the character Sean in episode 8. You know, Sean played by Robert Douglas. He's my friend Bob, and it took great pleasure in blowing off his face. And that was very cool. It was all charred and a little bit of blood, but it was fun. I remember he texted me and was like, "What did you do to my face?" My favorite effect has to be the explosion that's caused by Amanda in episode 6 when she kills the interdimensional fly. It was a very cool idea that we would have the explosion, but she presses the button at the same time, just barely saving them from, you know, dying and jumping to another universe where there is no explosion. So that one was one of my favorites. And you know, as much as I'd love to tell you all the cool effects we're gonna have in episode 10, and believe me, they're very, very cool. You know, spoilers. Gotta tune in next week to see the coolest effects that our show's gonna bring ya. So that'll do for my T4DR explainer, the VFX. So thank you to Gringo VFX, headed by Christopher Riemann. And yeah, we will see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.
Snip, 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 snip.